Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us. I missed you last week while I was in Washington, D.C., representing Montana at the National Governors Association winter meeting. There I led discussion on national workforce challenges, and I didn't miss an opportunity to talk about how Montana is improving our workforce and our continued focus on creating greater opportunities for all Montanans. I learned a lot from our private sector partners and the other governors about what's working in their states. Some of the stuff I can bring back home here. I also brought a familiar message for all of you to the national stage, and that is that Montana is open for business. While in Washington, I also spoke with military leadership and the White House officials about something that's been top of mind for all Montanans. And without question, over the last 2+ weeks, the nation has been alarmed and concerned about provocative incursions into our airspace. From the Chinese spy balloon that came into our sovereign airspace here in Montana, to multiple objects that have been shot down from the American skies. First, I want to thank our servicemen and women who responded to protect our homeland and remain ready to defend us each and every day. They are our nation's heroes. They're the ones we rely on to keep us safe and secure when we face the most daunting challenges in uncertain times. We all owe them a debt of gratitude, and that's one we can never fully repay. From the heroic pilots that fly our fighter jets and protect our skies, to the brave men and women of the Montana National Guard, to all who wear the proud uniform of the United States, thank you for your service. Now, I know a lot of Montanans have questions, and let's be clear, Montanans deserve answers. What's been happening in America's skies is deeply disconcerting, and the lack of answers has been equally troubling. Leaving Montanans and Americans in the dark is completely unacceptable. With many questions still unanswered about the Chinese spy balloon and objects being shot out of the skies, the Biden administration must be fully forthcoming with Montanans and all Americans. While I don't have any new details to share today, I know that we'll keep demanding answers. As the Commander-in-Chief of the Montana National Guard, know that our soldiers will stand ready to help keep our state safe and our nation. And above all, my message to Montanans and all Americans is this: America needs to show strength. We must show strength in defending the liberties that are foundational to who we are as Americans and our way of life. We must remain united in our commitment to the ideals that have made America the most free, prosperous, and exceptional nation in our history. Above all, we must celebrate the freedoms that define the American experience. And together, we must defend them. It's the American spirit of resilience and strength that makes Montana the best state in the nation. It's part of what makes us the last best place. And when it comes down to it, we're strongest when we stand together. Our united, resilient Montana spirit was on full display last night in Sydney, where I held a community listening session. Facing the announced closure of Sydney Sugars, many folks have been left wondering about what the future holds for them. But thanks to Montana's resilience and innovation, it was encouraged by what I heard yesterday. In the face of adversity, the Sydney community is poised to grow stronger together. I heard from community members, and their grief is real. But their commitment to stand together and to help each other is just as real. With their input and suggestions, we'll do all we can at the state here to be a good partner, to help people get back on their feet, and to create greater opportunities for Montanans in good-paying jobs. That's at the core of the Montana Comeback Plan. growing opportunity while protecting our way of life. That's why I was also in Lewistown yesterday, meeting with job creators and discussing our pro-family, pro-jobs, pro-business plan. And here's what I heard. Folks in Lewistown told me what I hear over and over throughout the state. They need tax relief. That's why we're moving forward with the largest tax cut in the history of the state. Our plan delivers the largest income tax cut ever, providing relief to Montanans at every income level. Our plan delivers significant, meaningful property tax relief as well. Our plan also raises the business equipment tax exemption to $1 million for every single Montana small business. Taken together with our work from last session, we'll eliminate more than 5,000 small businesses from the business equipment tax rolls entirely. To build stronger families, we're proposing a $1,200 per child tax credit for kids under 6. We've proposed an adoption tax credit so every child can live in a home where they can reach their full God-given potential. Our plan also makes Montana more competitive with our neighboring states. By making Montana more competitive, first-born Montanans will choose to stay here to live, work, and raise a family in the communities they love, with the people they love. And second, we'll attract innovators who will invest in our communities and create good-paying jobs for more Montanans. Working with the legislature, I look forward to providing Montanans the tax relief they need and deserve. I'm encouraged by the progress the legislature is making to provide Montanans with meaningful tax relief, and we need to get these bills across the finish line. Housing is also a priority for the folks I met in Lewistown yesterday. The demand for more housing has grown for more than a decade, and home building hasn't kept up. And it's not just places like Bozeman and Missoula. It's growing in thriving communities like Lewistown as well. To sustain our historic economic success, we must increase the supply of affordable, attainable housing. Last year, I brought together a diverse, bipartisan housing task force. They delivered many strategies to increase the supply of affordable, attainable housing, and we're implementing them. We're cutting red tape to streamline permitting and the building process. We put forward the Homes program, which invests $200 million to expand water and sewer infrastructure and ultimately expand housing capacity throughout the state. And there are a host of other bills before the legislature right now. Let me be clear, there's no silver bullet that will fix this urgent need, but we will take steps in that direction, and many good ideas are in process. Ultimately, to increase the supply of affordable workforce housing, we can't keep doing the same thing we've done year in and year out. The state can't, and local governments can't either. It just hasn't worked. I urge the legislature to get pro-housing reforms to my desk as soon as possible. There's another item I urge the legislature to get to my desk, and that's Senate Bill 47. Without it, Montana truckers will not be able to operate outside state lines, and the state could lose more than $35 million per year in federal funding that we need to fix roads and bridges. I want to take a minute to thank Senator Teresa Manzella for her leadership on Senate Bill 47. She gets it. Montana, and this is a little embarrassing, Montana is the last state in the country to comply with federal entry-level driver training standards. This final rule has been around for more than 6 years. 49 other states have already done it. Montana is last. SB 47 would bring Montana into compliance, just like every other state. If we don't pass SB 47, the federal government may decertify our CDL program and without federal roads funding for Montana and withhold federal funding for our highways. Failing to get this done would be a dereliction of duty. Failing to get this done would effectively shut down trucking in the state of Montana. Failing to get this done would risk more than $35 million per year in federal funds for roads, bridges, and safety projects. Is it worth the gamble? I don't think so. I want our Montana truckers to be able to earn a living operating outside our state boundaries. I want our roads and bridges to be safe, and the federal funding will keep them that way. What I don't want, and what Montanans don't want, is a gas tax to take care of the funding gap if we don't pass SB 47. The bill passed Senate Judiciary in late January. The bill failed on a narrow vote in early February. Senators who understand the urgency of the situation tried to have the bill reconsidered. The motion failed. Here's the vote sheet. I won't speculate on the motive of the 27 senators, but the facts are clear. When presented the chance to keep Montana truckers on the road and keep our roads and bridges safe, they voted against it. I urge Montanans to call their legislators and ask them to get moving on SB 47 because there's too much on the line. Again, I want to thank Senator Manzella for her leadership on this and the other senators who have consistently voted for SB 47. There are some other games going on in the legislature with critical legislation. Yesterday, the House Appropriations Committee tabled HB 269, which would establish a local disaster mitigation fund. Why should we wait to react to a local emergency when we could work to prevent it in the first place? The local disaster mitigation fund will help us prevent emergencies from leveraging state dollars in a 9-to-1 federal match. Consider a $25 million irrigation ditch and slope failure currently in Yellowstone County. We could use $2.5 million investment from the proposed disaster mitigation fund to leverage another $22.5 million from the federal government. That just makes sense. We could do that with the Big Sky Fire Mitigation Project, or the line mitigation projects in the Flathead, or the Glasgow Levee, or the Billings Drought Mitigation Project, and the list goes on and on. This legislation just makes sense. And again, I won't speculate on the motives, but 15 members of the House Appropriation Committee voted yesterday to table the bill. If you want to take proactive steps to prevent local disasters, call your legislators and tell them to get moving on this common sense approach. Before I close, I want to reiterate that Montanans sent us here to serve them and deliver on their priorities. And it's a message worth repeating because that's what I'm focused on each and every day. And with that, I'd be happy to take some questions. Who'd like to be first? Jonathan?
Thank you, Governor. Montana Television Network. There were some hearings earlier today regarding bills related to Lake County and their share of law enforcement costs related to the Flathead Reservation, the Public Law 280. I was curious if you've taken any position on whether you think the state should take a greater role or a role in funding some of that cost on the reservation there.
You know, we have been working closely with Lake County commissioners and tribal leadership. In fact, the lieutenant governor went up and sat down to have dialogue there. Our goal is to bring the two parties together because we need to continue to have law enforcement there. Again, we'll consider any bill that gets to my desk, but we've not taken a specific position other than we need to solve it. Other questions?
I've got one for Stuart and for people with radio.
Yeah, I think good ideas can come from both sides of the aisle. We put forward a proposal based on the bipartisan work of the task force. The key piece there is really streamlining permitting. I was really proud of the work that DEQ did to get rid of the backlog on subdivision applications. We had almost 500 in backlog when I took office. We now have none that are overdue. And really a keystone of that, which came out of this bipartisan work, was the Homes Act, which provides $200 million in low-interest loans to local municipalities to extend water and sewer to new subdivisions, provided they're higher density and oriented towards workforce. So again, there's a lot of bills going through the legislature. We'll consider the ones that get to my desk, but I think there's some good ideas floating around. Any other questions? Great, thank you for coming.